of traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and the waters that surround us, and I pay my respect to their elders past and present.
We thank you, Lord, for the honour of being called by our fellow citizens to this office of honour and trust. Give us grace diligently and honourably, free from private interest or prejudice, to discharge the duties entrusted to us, to the common good, and as in your sight, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Please have a seat. I don't think we have any apologies tonight. Do we have any declarations of interest? We're not dealing with the minutes of a previous meeting tonight, so and we don't have any speakers tonight. So I'll move straight into the paper. Councillor Williams. Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an important meeting because it's dealing with our next financial year's expenditure and income, and it does incorporate in it our recent rate variations, which have been fully supported by the independent pricing tribunal. So I believe that the process we've gone through to create this document and the budget and the recommendations has been very inclusive. It has involved both the council, the staff and the community in coming to terms with what we as a community want for our area and what we can afford to spend on those needs and wants. It is important to note that during that process that the independent IPART has noted that Council has demonstrated that its community is aware of the need and the extent of the proposed rate increases. The Council's communicated its proposed 2019-2020 rate increases and used a variety of engagement methods to engage with its community. So I'm confident the Council has done everything it's needed to do to engage with its community, to inform them and to get an understanding of what this budget is about, how it's structured, and why the particularly the rate increases are needed. IPART has also made a big point about our application as being reasonable and that they had no problems with approving what we were being asked for. So I support the recommendation and I congratulate the staff on the thoroughness and, as I understand it, the conservative nature of this budget, so we should be able to deliver to it, which I think is very important.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there anybody wishing to speak against the motion? Councillor Collins.
I don't know if it's against, but I might. I have some questions and some follow-on amendments. So
please go ahead.
All right.
Through the General Manager.
Yes, please. In leadership, governance, management, and council support, there's a community survey here of $30,000 a year for the next 10 years. Could you elaborate on what that is?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the community survey is an independent survey that council undertakes to assess satisfaction with its services and its delivery of its program. My understanding is the last survey was completed in 2017. We were due to complete one this year, however, that will be completed in September later. Sorry, it was due to be completed in 2018, but it will be completed in September 2019.
Okay, but previously it hasn't been happening? It seems like a new thing that's just started.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my understanding is that it's happened every second year. I've seen a 2015 and a 2017 survey. Prior to that, I can't answer that, Councillor.
Okay. Is it a statutory requirement to do the survey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the councils are required to seek feedback and input from their community, and one important way to do that is through a community survey. The benefit of the way in which the survey has been done in the past is it's been undertaken by an independent company, and I believe in 2017 that was through Iris, and it enables council to have an independent assessment from the community around what its priorities should be, but also its performance over the past 12 months or so.
Okay. Another question, if I may. Also, in leadership and governance information system, there's a social media expense of $46,000 a year. Could you elaborate on what that is?
Yep. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that funding in this current financial year was to support the development of the website through engaging a project officer to work on that, as well as undertake some social media work. What the proposal is going forward is to use that money to focus on communication from council to the community. At the moment, we don't have a dedicated communication resource, and it was something that was heavily focused on in the last community survey in 2017, where the community said that they would like council to communicate more effectively. And so the intention is to use that money in the 1920 financial year, to support that through the engagement of a 2-day-a-week communications person.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I might speak to this if I can.
Please do.
First of all, I do have some notes here. I want to thank the staff for this document. It's I know it's a very big piece of work, and it is very difficult to complete. And you know, our small size as a council is a disadvantage when it comes to this, and so we do need to watch everything that we can. And look, my concerns with this, and it isn't a criticism, because I realise that the situation we're in isn't necessarily anybody's fault. It's just the nature of where we're at. But we do have projected deficits as far as the eye can see, and that's, to have a 10-year plan with no sort of turnaround option is a concern. And whilst a lot of that is you know, there's depreciation, there's, you know, non-cash items that can sometimes throw these numbers out. If you actually look at the long term in the statement of cash flows, which is I think the third report in your paper, the cash and cash equivalents of this council over 10 years will be $1.4 million less than it is today, which means that the funding the next 10 years, we're actually using that money that we sold the car park. And whilst it's great to balance a budget, I look at this particular measure as a real concern, because it's an underlying. It basically means we're burning cash every year. So it has nothing to do with depreciation or any non-cash items. I mean, there are issues with degradation of assets and, you know, catching up the maintenance backlog. I'm going to put that to the side for a minute, because that's a you know, it's a different discussion to have. But if the projected cash position of this council in 10 years is having $1.5 million less than we've got now, we need to have a look at what we can do to try and tighten up some of those expenses. And whilst I know that staff have absolutely done as much as they can to ensure service delivery but maintain cash, there are a few things in our realm, in this council's realm, that is not necessarily a staff issue, that we can do tonight. And I've got a few amendments that if we pass them all, then our cash position in 10 years will actually be more than it is today. So it will save us $1.6 million over 10 years. And I believe with little effect on the community. So, I'm not sure yet whether I'm going to do each amendment or put them together. I might just read the room a little on this. I'm hoping we'll get a bipartisan result, because it would be fantastic if we can have a result where we have improved cash position over 10 years rather than a worsening position. So
I appreciate you raising the point you're raising.
Yes.
Particularly the deficit. Normally we have 5 minutes to speak if you're speaking against the motion as it is, but you want to introduce some amendments to the motion.
Yeah.
So could I suggest you quickly whip through the amendments that you've got, so that we understand them, and then we can work out.
It won't take more than a few minutes.
Okay, because it could be two ways to handle them. I'm happy to refer the General Manager, but we could take some of them on notice and go and research them so we come back with a better answer. We still have some time to do that, but I think if they're very complex, then
they're not complex.
All right, let's have a run through and see what you've got.
It's going to be a short meeting anyway, so let's first of all, the community survey for $30,000 a year. It is a lovely idea, and it's not that it's not important to get community feedback, but over 10 years, index, that's $333,000. Basically to find out from the community what they want. I mean, if we need to spend $30,000 a year to, find out what we're doing here, look, when budgets are tight, I think there are other ways that we can engage the community. We have elections every 4 years. That's a fantastic opportunity for councillors to find out what the community wants. I'm going to talk about councillor training and delegates' expenses. Currently, to go to delegate conferences, delegate conferences, the budget is $12,276 per year. If we were to, that's $1,753 per councillor. If we were to do it just cap it at $1,000 per councillor per year, that would save $58,000 over 10 years, just by taking $700 off each councillor. And that, that still means we can go to, one conference, and if there's a little bit of a difference, then perhaps a councillor might want to chip in a couple of $100 if it's that important. The other thing is councillor training, which is currently $2,046 per councillor per year. The total of that is $14,322. If we were to say $1,000 per year for councillor training, and that's formal courses. Of course, we do our own reading, research, all that kind of stuff. That's still an option. That would give each councillor $1,000 for councillor training, $1,000 for delegate conference expenses, which could be, interchanged if you want to sort of bump between the two. Council training will save $81,000 over 10 years. So, social media as well, $46,000. I think we can just, I know that's more sort of a staff-related issue, but really, in all honesty, there's not a lot of engagement on social media. There's only 524 likes on the Facebook page, which means at the most we're getting to 4% of residents, and to spend $40,000 to get to 4% of residents, well, at that rate, to get to all residents, we'd have to spend $1 million. So it's not an effective use of funds. Engagement is important, social media is important, but not that important. Now for the probably the more unpopular ones. The independent remuneration tribunal, which has come back recently with our annual determination, puts Hunters Hill in a band for our remuneration which is set as a metropolitan small council. And as a councillor at a metropolitan small councillor, the Independent Remuneration Tribunal has said that we should be paid between $9,190 and $20,280. That's the band we're in. We're also in that band with Willoughby, which is a huge council, and we're getting basically paid the same amount as Willoughby councillors. I don't believe. A few years ago, this council was paid 75% of the maximum, which is somewhere between the 10,000 and the 20,000, around about the 15, which will be more commensurate with the size of our council, which is the smallest in New South Wales. So as far as metropolitan small councils, we are the smallest. We are the smallest. So the idea that we are paid the maximum within our band is not within the spirit of the Local Government Remuneration Tribunal. And I know it's not a popular thing, but look, the savings that we will, for this council, by taking a 25% cut to our fees and the mayoral fees, over 10 years, the member fees will be $500,000 and the mayoral fee will be $160,000. So if we were to amend all these things tonight, we would save, $1.6 million over 10 years. $1.6 million. We add that to the cash position over the 10 years and we are in a better position, in fact by $230,000. So they're all in the governance and communication sphere. There's no cut to services within council. It is purely our remuneration, which is a big hit. We all feel it. It is community survey, Facebook, our training, which I think that, that training is a bit of a partnership. I think that we have an obligation to, we spend time to train, we get, reimbursed to pay some of it for council, but it's also something we need to contribute to because it's our own professional development. So I would like to put those as an amendment now. I think I'll do them all at once as a single amendment, and let's see how it goes. So, do you want me to read them out?
You can. I'm not sure how we will deal with them one by one, I would think, rather than as a single amendment.
Oh,
but we need some.
I haven't put the amendment yet.
Yep. So
that's that we don't do the community survey
at all.
At all.
All right.
Actually, sorry, I think because it's the budget, we take that out of. Would that be a better way to do it? Take it out of the budget. It doesn't mean you can't survey the community. It just means you don't have $30,000 to do it. So through you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It would be difficult to survey the community and have the same level of rigour around it without engaging the consultant. So we can certainly survey, but it wouldn't have that rigour or the independence that the current approach has.
Yeah, I don't want to say that council doesn't survey because that's not. I just want to take it out of the budget. If there's no budget for it, then it probably won't get done unless money's found somewhere else. Yeah, where's the budget? Allocation, yeah, okay. Also the, yes, that is number 1. Number 2, the same sort of vein. That removes from the budget the allocation for social media. Number 3, councillor, individual councillor training budget is limited to $1,000 per year. Number 4, that individual councillor delegate expenses.
Conference.
Well, it's in as delegate expenses, but I think it means conference. Is reduced to $1,000 per year per councillor. That councillor fees are reduced by 25%. That the mayoral fee is reduced by 25%. Apologies, Mr. Mayor, I don't know, it's not. Yeah. And that's it. That's the amendment.
Second that.
Yeah.
Seconded, Councillor Miles. Thank you, Councillor Miles. Thank you, Councillor.
And I would be open. I'll just say I'll be open to taking certain things out if it were to save us at least some money. So.
All right. Would do you feel you've had a chance to speak to it
yes,
prior to putting?
Yeah, thank
okay,
you.
Good. On the social media, I might just defer to the General Manager, if I may, and get her opinion on the social media.
Yep. Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify the social media title, it was probably not worded the best, but going forward, the intention was to create a 2-day-a-week role for a communications officer. We would be probably the only council, I would say, in metropolitan Sydney that does not have a dedicated communications role. And it's a function that one of the staff has undertaken, but due to other internal changes, they've picked up other functions. So the benefit of this role is actually having a communications person that will do some social media, but it's also keeping the website up and current and ensuring that the content managers keep it fresh. It's also producing the quarterly newsletter, so writing and pulling together all the text for the community newsletter that we produce, as well as some of the online e-zines. So I just wanted to clarify that it's not purely about Facebook or Twitter, it's our communications with the community. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Is that clear? Any questions on that?
Do you have a proportion of that? Because I mean, 2 days a week, 40,000 would be what, 120. So what proportion would be for communication, and perhaps we can shave some of that?
It's through you, Mr. Mayor. It's the basis behind the 46 was 2 days a week, and it's a combination. So it could be when we have inquiries from the media, having someone to respond to that, but it's also to prepare newsletters. We also want to be more active in that space, and so looking at improving that. As an example, we've just produced a Gladesville newsletter that was tabled last Thursday at the Gladesville Main Street Committee, and that's something we'd like to do more of going forward, so we're more effective around promoting what we're doing and engaging with the community. So it's a bit hard to answer because it's about also changing what we do to improve that going forward.
Does that clarify that for you?
Yes, it does. The difficult part is I think most of it was spent on social media in the past, and now we've got a situation where we don't know what the breakup is.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. We've been going through some internal changes with the structure and staffing, and in looking at that, we've reallocated roles and duties. And looking at the organisation's needs and reallocating some of those roles within the staff structure, my advice is that we do need that 2-day-a-week role, communications officer, to effectively do what the council is seeking us to do.
Okay, thank you, General Manager. All right, is anybody, I'm in your hands how we deal with this, but I think we can probably debate it and work through the issues as we choose to speak for or against. Is that acceptable to councillors?
Are you suggesting we deal with each item individually?
No, I suggest we will have to probably at the end deal with it, but if you want to speak against or for, you can work through the issues. Anybody wishing to speak for the motion?
For the amendment?
The amendment, sorry, thank you.
I feel like we have to go one point at a time.
Councillor Sanderson, do you want to speak against? We've had.
Make a suggestion?
Yeah, sure.
I guess I've spoken for it. If everyone wants to speak for or against and just give their indication of each item, then
Yeah,
perhaps
I think that's fine. That's what I was suggesting. I think that's what I was suggesting. But yes. So anybody wishing to speak against the amendment? For the amendment, Councillor Miles.
Mr. Mayor, I think that this amendment has been raised in obviously Councillor Collins' spirit of wanting to address what is a growing and significant problem in our budget, which is that the operational deficit year on year has been sort of tranching on too long, and we talk about what we're doing to address that problem, and there are other things happening, and there are obviously things in the operations of council that the leadership team and council staff are looking at doing, which is much appreciated by the council. And things like the property committee obviously are opportunities for us to start addressing that issue and see where there may be revenue opportunities. But the long and short of it, and I guess what Councillor Collins is getting to, is that we're running up to some pretty significant issues, and our reliance on those sort of outside sources of income, be that from the property committee or nitpicking here and there. 2 years ago we had a bus signage contract that was a large tranche of funds that allowed us to see that year into a much better position. But we keep addressing these things reactively, and I think that what Councillor Collins has done, obviously using his accountancy expertise, is drill down into the budget and look at where we can make significant changes to that 10-year forecast of deficits in terms of our cash position, and see where we can make sacrifices, I guess, as council, mainly without drawing out of funds that are going into operations or service delivery, how to address or deal with components of addressing that deficit as the councillors ourselves. So the General Manager said that there are potentially issues with the social media allocation. Happy to look at that further. Obviously our communications budget is quite important. The community survey, again, I don't actually have a problem with removing that allocation so that we can look at funding it elsewhere or look at how that mix works. That's a 300,000 odd item of expenditure over the 10 years. Perhaps it goes back to biannually, and I know, Mr. Mayor, that you were quite keen on seeing that happen annually, but it is when you take it out of being a yearly expenditure item of $33,000 odd and you put it over a 10-year period, and you realise that we're going to be potentially $330,000 worse off from a cash position. That's a significant piece of expenditure, in my view. Items number 2, 4, 5 and 6, I think, are no-brainers. That council has an allocation of $1,000 a year for our training budget, which is something that we have to do under. It's mandatory for councillors to undergo some training. Capping the expenditure for that, capping the expenditure for delegate expenses and potentially looking where we can tighten those budgets seems like a very easy way for us as councillors to deal with items of expenditure as they come up. Equally, the 25% reduction in councillors' fees. The reality is we are the smallest council in New South Wales. Burwood's the second smallest. Burwood's some 10,000 or so residents larger than we are. We, not to sort of dismiss the work that the councillors do, but we do have less residents to look after than other councillors. There are councillors in large councils that have wards that are larger than our entire council. Now that's not a position we want to find ourselves in, of course, but I guess a part of not being amalgamated is that we need to address these structural issues, these finance issues, and looking at a 25% cut in councillor fees. At the end of the day, it's not going to make much of a difference to anyone around this room. It's something that says to the community we get it, and we're trying to address the issue. And it's not even a token gesture. As Councillor Collins has demonstrated, it's actually a substantial saving over the 10 years. It's a significant saving to the community over that 10-year period that will just put us in a better position as council. I think that is the last 4 points, as in points 3, 4, 5 and 6 are no-brainers. We do need to tighten up our expenditure, and I think that looking at where we're spending that money in service delivery is probably not the right way to go. Looking at where council's spending money on itself, essentially, as a governance body, happy to do that. Equally, happy to look at items 1 and 2, potentially given the General Manager's comments about point 2, we may have to look at what that looks like, and where maybe change the wording of that to a communications role so that we can get a better understanding of what's being spent where. But particularly those last 4 items, I think, are something that we should consider very seriously tonight. But happy to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Anybody wishing to speak against the amendment? Councillor Williams.
I don't support the amendment for a basic reason. Council is well aware of its financial situation, and it's documented in these reports we have before us. Council is also very actively working to resolve that financial issue. We are doing a property strategy, which hopefully will increase our revenue. We're doing a risk management strategy, which will hopefully get us a better handle and a more efficient way of dealing with our assets. We've got a new leadership team that is working through those issues and will progress for us the appropriate budget in the future years. I think it's premature to take these actions. I think I'd like to see the General Manager and her team work through the issues and come up with the solutions that we're all looking for, rather than just picking things out of the budget in a piecemeal way. Disconnecting ourselves from the community, I think, is an enormous danger for any council. By not conducting rigorous and independent surveys to get feedback on our performance, I think is an insult to our community. I think the community expects an opportunity to be able to feed back to us how we're performing, where we're doing things that they see as being important. Social media, well, now there's the explanation that it's a broader picture, a broader brush. Again, it comes back to, do we want to be an insular council, or do we want to be a council that engages and works with our community? And there's nothing better than having somebody that can actually articulate what council's on about, distill and put in a very concise way the issues that the community want addressed in communication. that professionalism has been lacking in council ever since I've been involved with it. It would be refreshing for us to be able to communicate in that effective and professional way with our community. So I don't see that as being something just to be discarded. Then we get on to the issue of the bottom three, or the bottom four. I can't quite see how somebody could attend a conference these days for $1,000. I think that's unrealistic. Likewise, training. Most training courses are quite expensive these days, and I think the appropriate budget is there. To cut our and the Mayor's remuneration by 25%, I think that that is not justified on the basis that, regardless of the size of the council, we all spend an enormous amount of time engaging and dealing with the community, attending meetings, preparing for meetings, consulting with people in the broader local government community. So I don't see that as being something that I feel is warranted, considering the effort that councillors around this table put in. So I'm a bit concerned that we just plucked issues out of the budget without due consideration, and some of those are key elements, I believe, in the council's future ability to engage and communicate with its community, and I think that's a fundamental process which this council needs to be doing, and any council, any organisation needs to be able to effectively communicate, able to monitor its performance in a rigorous and independent way. So for those various reasons, I can't support the motion at this point, or the amendment at this point in time. I would like to see the General Manager and her team come back to us in 12 months' time after they've had a chance to implement the budget, and also to come back through those other processes that Council's working through, property strategies, risk management strategies, to come up with a long-term future for the Council. I think it's extremely important, and I think it's something that is achievable by this Council. Just plucking things out of the budget, I don't think is the way to go.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Anybody wishing to speak for the amendment? Anybody wishing to speak against the amendment? Sorry, Councillor Crassel was...
No.
Councillor Sanderson?
Yep.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. With respect to the first of the proposed amendments, we didn't have a survey in 2007 or 2018. We're talking about the budget for next year. Effectively, in the next 12 months, we need to have this survey, if it's going to be, even if we reduce it to being biannual. So there's no justification for removing that from the budget. With the second one, we've had a clarification that the allocation in the budget, although it says social media, is for a great deal more than that, and I would not wish to pull that out from the General Manager's explanation. I would not wish to interfere in any way with the General Manager's plans in that area. It's something incredibly important, and I think we all agree on that, and I would hate to interfere with the General Manager's plans in that area. With respect to number 3, I think that's the one that relates to training. My understanding is that there are legislative changes that make councillor training even more important. I mean, I've been very conscious of the expenditure on training. I don't think I've fully taken that up, but on the other hand, I spent $4,000 from my own pocket to go and study a subject at university myself, which I was very happy to do. I think councillors should have that discretion about the training that they undertake, and I think we've been, for the most part, very sensible in what we've done, and I think we've got to be very conscious of the new legislative requirements in that area. With respect to delegate expenses, as it's referred to there, again, I've been selective about conferences I've been to. I try to limit those expenses. But I think one of the conferences I went to, the fee was over $1,000. That was a 2-day conference, it was very valuable. Both Councillor Williams and I and others, and Councillor Crassler too, have been to various conferences, and I think we've brought valuable reports back to Council. The other important thing about that is that it gives us connection with other local government. I see that as being incredibly important. I think, you know, as individual councillors, I think we're all mature enough to make judgments as to whether training and also conferences we may choose to go to are value for money. As I said, I've always been very conscious of that. Again, look, with respect to reduction in councillor fees, I don't know that this is the meeting that should be dealt with. I presume there'll be something on the agenda in July that will deal with the IPART report. I think that'll be a better time to be dealing with that. So at this point in time, I think it's premature just to come up with a motion like that. If we have this debate at the time we deal with the IPART report the Local Government Remunerations Tribunal, which I pulled out today, and I noted that it was I believe chaired by Dr. Robert Lang, who was also our delegate when it came to the amalgamations matter. So I think it would be more appropriate until we've had time to consider that report before we make any decisions about councillor fees. Thank you, Mr. Bear.
Thank you. Anybody wishing to speak for the amendment? Against the amendment? Councillor Crassler.
A lot's been covered already, so I'll just add a few things. I think what Councillor Collins is suggesting here is that we seek councillors in the future who are, on the whole, rich retirees, who don't believe in professional development, who don't ask our community what they want, and who don't tell our community what they're doing. This is not a democratic solution that you're providing here in these amendments. By reducing councillor income, I think all the other things have been spoken to pretty well, but by reducing councillor income, you are ruling out a whole tranche of particular councillors, as Councillor Miles assumed to say. I think we can all afford to take a cut here at this table. I think perhaps you don't know all of us as well as you assume to, and you certainly don't know anyone else who would like the opportunity to stand up and democratically represent their community. You're ruling out or limiting double income households where at least one parent would have to give up working hours and accommodate that in their budget, and they would have to get babysitters. You're ruling out single income houses for the same reason. You're ruling out single parents for the same reason. You're ruling out youth and retirees who aren't wealthy. I think you're young and wealthy. I think, and I can make that assumption, you tell us. So I think it is exclusive, and it is everything that all modern businesses, councils and communities aspire not to be. And for this reason, I don't think that it's a good idea to limit the incomes of councillors. I would add, though it's no one's business, several of us councillors do invest quite a bit of our own personal money in our professional development, and representing our council at delegate opportunities as a representative of our council to bring back information to council is, while an honour, it is another expense that we share with the council, as all private and public enterprises do. It's our responsibility and our commitment and our, duty to make sure all of our councillors are up to speed on the latest that's going on around the world, so that we can make the best decisions on the part of our community. I think this is not just short-sighted, I think it's dangerously exclusive, and I wholeheartedly don't support it.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak for the amendment? Anybody wishing to speak against the amendment? I would, if I may. I think you've raised some very good points, I must say. If I'd looked through it and seen those points, I would have seen them as opportunities too, looked at it that closely, and I think you've raised some very good points. The community survey is something that I've been pursuing for my entire time on council for a particular reason, that companies that measure the satisfaction and enablement in their employees and companies that measure satisfaction in their customers generally improve year on year. Whether it needs to be done every year is certainly something we can debate in the future, but we haven't done one for 2 years, and I think it's time to do one this year. While I'm on that point, anything multiplied by 10 always looks like a big number. We do get a chance to revisit this each year, and maybe we'll make some different decisions next year round. In terms of training, modern companies spend up to about 3% of their total budget on training. It's quite common for them to check each other's spend on training. They publish it in their reports, and 3% is not an unusual amount to spend on training. I was at a lecture by Sir Justice Michael Kirby at the Opera House, and it goes a long way back. It goes right back to 1989, and he stood up and spoke to a number of students coming out of Sydney University, where I was doing some work at the time, and he talked about continuing education. He said, and this is not the end of your studies, this is just the beginning of your studies. And there were students that had degrees, and they were going, and many of them did think it was the end of their studies, I'm sure. He managed to convince me that wasn't the case, and I continued to pursue ongoing education myself after that. I think social media, the General Manager's asked for some money to spend on social media. I fully support that. Communications. Communications, I think it's listed as social media, but I fully support that. In terms of council remuneration, if you were to believe that we should do it, then I would join you, and I'd accept a cut in the fees that I get. If you decide as a group you want to do that, I won't fight that. However, I think it's a small amount of money that councillors get for the amount of hours they spend, and I think it doesn't make much difference whether you're in a big council or a small council. The fees are probably equally applied to big council councillors and small council councillors, about the same, I think. So I don't support any of them, although I think it's worth us focusing on these things. I think they were well drawn out as governance and communication. I think we can look at them again next year, and I think we'll know where we get to next year. So I think we're at the end, and you have right of reply, Councillor Collins.
Thank you. Look, obviously this isn't going to get up tonight, but I will just say a few things about what's been said. In regards to Councillor Williams's comments about, not picking things out of the budget, that's actually how you balance them. You've actually got to pick things out and say, do we need to spend this money? Ideally, the best outcome would be to actually double everything. Let's do more community surveys. Let's double everyone's fees. Let's do, more training, everything's going to be better, except that we're going to run out of money. It's not short-sighted if you look at our long-term financial plan of 10 years and see absolutely no way that we're going to balance the books even in 10 years. We're running out of money slowly, and all I'm suggesting is that we just, as a leadership group, that we show a little bit of leadership in this area, because we can't advocate for a program of fiscal responsibility if we don't show any fiscal leadership. That's what this is about. It's one way to say to the community and to the council to say, you know what, we're going to tighten our belts. We do a little bit of that each year, and in 5 years' time, things might balance. We still have so much work to do on these footpaths. The amount of money that's in here, $100,000 a year for footpath maintenance, is nowhere near enough to do what needs to be done. We have 17 footpaths here that are rated as a 4, which means more than 50, what is it, more than 50%. That's, yeah, significant defects affecting up to 50% of the footpath area. Now, that $1.6 million that I've suggested that we could save over 10 years would be enough to almost fix all of it. We have in this document, if you, I don't know if anyone got down to page, well, right, these aren't numbered, but the footpath renewal program for 2013-14 to 2025. This doesn't even cover it all. So this is just one step in the direction that we need to do. I actually believe we need to take money out of savings and restore our infrastructure assets. I've had that fight here before. I lost it. I still believe that's what we need to do. But if we can't do that, at least see if we can try to at least balance our cash position. And as for Councillor Crassoy's comments about councillor fee cuts being exclusive, it's absolutely not. This is not. I understand that the amount of hours we put into this job, it is remunerated terribly. For some of us, it costs money to do this, and you know that everybody's different. But you know, as for Councillor Sanderson saying, "Oh, this isn't the time to do it," it's never the time to do it. I brought it up before. No one wants to talk about it. No one wants to support it. No one even wants to find anything tonight that we can tighten. Can anybody here? This motion isn't going to get up. Can we make some sacrifice just to improve the bottom line, even if it's by $100? That's a start. That's a start. At the moment, we've accepted that we're going to have deficits for the next 10 years, that our cash position, our cash burn is going to continue. We are going to we're going to slowly spend all our money, and nobody here is willing to even budge. Maybe because it's my idea, but nobody's even willing to suggest one thing where we can save some money, and that is not being fiscally responsible. We are all responsible for the fiscal outcome of this council. To come here and just say, "Yep, fine, tick it off." We haven't done any work in this. This is all staff, and it's been fantastic. But there are certain things that it's difficult for staff to, they can't cut our budgets. I mean, it's a little bit prickly, a little bit delicate. So we're saying, you know what, we're happy to take a little bit of a haircut on this. We'll go to one less conference this year. We won't go to the tropics this year. All right? That's not hard. The community expect that. And if you do a $30,000 survey and ask them as the first question, what do you think about us spending $30,000 asking what you want, rather than actually doing what you want, which is to fix their footpaths or whatever it is they want to do, I think you're going to find out that people will not be happy. So I tried to balance these books. I think I made a pretty good effort. $1.6 million over 10 years. It means we would have more cash than we did, than we do now, instead of less. But clearly, no one's open to improving this situation. So they're my ideas for now.
I have a question. The report you referred to on roads.
Yes.
Is that
footpaths?
Footpaths. Is that a current report? Is that
yes.
in the criteria used to assess them?
Is 5th of April.
5th of April.
Mm-hmm. It was in our council bulletin.
Right, but that assessment was an accounting assessment rather than a asset manager assessment.
No, this is actually an asset. This is as an asset assessment. Correct? Yes. So they're all rated here.
So that's accurate.
Number one, if a very uneven surface, multiple trip hazards, more than 50% of the area, pedestrian type school kids, usage high. It's not even on the. It's not even on the list.
Okay. And do you accept that we get a chance to look at the budget again next year? And the long-term plan again next year?
I accept that we also looked at it last year. And
so do you accept there's an opportunity again to look at the spend again next year? And we're not committing to a 10-year plan with that for the next 10 years. Do you accept that?
I don't accept the premise, no.
You don't accept it, we'll look at this again in 12 months' time.
What, kick the can down the road? Is that what, I don't know what you want me
Councillor,
to say.
I'm asking you, do we get a chance to look at the budget again next year and the long-term plan again next year?
We look at it every year.
Good. So the other question I've got for you, the property committee has an opportunity to look at turning around our fortunes in the future financially. Do you agree with that?
It is an opportunity, yes. It took 18 months to get it up and running.
But we're looking at that at the moment.
Beg your pardon?
And we're looking at that at the moment.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So any further discussion? Any clarifications required? Any further questions of Councillor Collins? Should I put the motion? Amendment? Thank you, Councillor. I'll put the amendment. Should we deal with all 6 at once, or would you like to deal with them individually?
We may as well, Mr. Mayor, because I don't think anyone's got an appetite to even save $1.
What would you like to deal with them all individually?
If anyone's willing,
or as a block?
If I may say, Mr. Mayor, if there is anybody willing to look at any of them separately, I'd be willing to pull it out as a separate. But I speak now or forever. Yeah.
So, Councillor, you're happy to deal with them as a block? I think we've got 5 votes to deal with them as a block. So I'll put the amendment. Thank you. I'll put the amendment. Those in favour? Against? That's lost. So we go back to the original recommendation. Moved Councillor Williams, I think, and seconded Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Williams.
Mr. Mayor, I've already spoken to the motion. I'd be interested if there are any other speakers before I have right of reply.
Anybody wishing to speak against the original recommendation? Anybody for the original recommendation? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to take the opportunity. I think a lot of what we've spoken about with the opportunities this council has in the area of property have come about through the refreshment that we have of this council through the efforts of our new General Manager. And through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to personally thank the General Manager for her efforts and also the efforts of staff that have gone into producing this. At this point in time, I would not wish to interfere with a budget where so much work has clearly gone in. I think the arguments against that were posed by Councillor Collins were, I think, an unnecessary interference with the process. I very happily support the direction of Council, and I'm sure that we will. You know, it's quite clear that whatever we do, the most important thing is that we start to get a better return on assets. We've got a process in place where that's going to start to occur, and I look forward to the recommendations that come from Property Committee, and I will certainly support those.
Right,
thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody wishing to speak against the recommendation? For? Councillor Crassoy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Again, I'll try not to double on what others have said, but I would like to also thank the General Manager and the staff for the work that they've done, having worked with us councillors on this as well and already had our feedback on this. I would just like to say the budget is what it has to be for now, and from the work that we've done with the staff and the General Manager, I have strong faith that going forward we are going to make ground, especially if we as councillors can work together and if we can try to respect the process of council to not disrupt the budget process by throwing in motions that don't necessarily respect the flow that's been laid out here. I would like to see, in the future, I would like to see more focus on community services, on place making, on access and walkability. I know that there will be opportunities to raise this repeatedly in coming months, particularly at quarterly budget reviews and again next year. And I would also like to see us seeking more opportunities from partnerships with other councils, which I know the General Manager and the team are already working on. And I would also like us to see taking advantage of grant opportunities. So with that in mind, thank you very much for the budget, and I support it.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? Councillor McLaughlin.
Councillor Crasso covered what I was going to cover, and that is to again thank the staff for putting this budget together, particularly the fresh eyes that Mr Husking has put over the budget. He has drilled down into the budget in a great deal of detail, and I think he's looked at absolutely every opportunity to make this budget as successful as it can be. This is our first budget under our new regime, and I am very confident that the procedures we have in place moving forward, particularly the new library committee that's been formed, the property committee, I am very confident that next year's budget will look very good once we get those two committees working as they should be. I don't accept that we're going to have deficits for 10 years moving forward. I have every confidence that we can achieve what we need to achieve very, very quickly now that we have some of those alternative revenue raising opportunities in place. So I'm satisfied with this budget. I'm satisfied with the fact that it is the first budget under a new GM. I'm satisfied that we've had a really good look at it, and I commend it to the community.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Any clarifications? Councillor Williams. Yes.
Mr Mayor, I think it's been highlighted around the table here tonight that the budget process is not static. We're not locking ourselves into a 10-year horizon. I believe this council has several opportunities available to it over the next 12 months to revisit where we're at. I have every confidence in the General Manager and her staff to cast their eyes over those opportunities and bring them to council. And it's been mentioned that we have strategies in place to do that. So I think it's wrong to portray council as in some sort of trajectory that we've got blinkers on and we're not going to do anything, and at the end of the day we're all going to fall over the edge of the cliff. I think that is a wrong portrayal of this council. This council has worked very actively and does realise the importance of addressing the budget and financial situation. We have strategies in place to deal with that. We have administration and staff capable of dealing with that. And I believe over the next 12 months, we'll be in a better position than what we are now for all those activities. So I don't accept that we're on this trajectory for the next 10 years. We're not. This is an iterative process. I also raised the issue that if somebody's going to pluck 6 or 7 issues and plonk them on the table, then I would like to see that if we had to reduce our budget by that amount, I would like to see the General Manager go away and come back with what she and her staff would see as being the appropriate things to reduce, not just placing things on the table without any notice or without any consultation. So I believe that this budget is the best option for council. I believe council has a vision and a strategy for delivering a balanced budget into the future, and I will work very actively to make those opportunities come about in a collaborative and a collective way around the table. I think the community expects it of us, and I believe we have the capability to deliver it for the community. So, Mr Mayor, I commend this budget in its current form, but I do stress it is not a static document. It's something that will be revisited and worked on as we get these opportunities on the table.
Thank you very much. So I don't think there's any further discussion required, so I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you very much, councillors. Meeting finished at 7:03.